This podcast may contain some explicit magical content. Hello. Welcome to Dear Divine Diary, a digital diary entry where I talk about my magical practice. I'm your host, Britt Vosicek. Today I'm going to give a little rundown of what's going on in my life and in my practice right now. On the new moon, I hosted a group pleasure ritual over Zoom, and we all masturbated together, and it was amazing. And also, yesterday, I went through a breakup. So, I'm going to talk about those two things and how I've been relating to it magically. The new moon ritual was amazing. I felt so nourished. I do have to be honest, I was nervous. I hadn't hosted a pleasure ritual since kind of like mid pandemic. I was doing virtual intimacy retreat. A friend of mine reached out and asked if I wanted to host anything on this intimacy festival that was taking place online. And it was peak pandemic time. You know, people were really hungry for intimacy. It was such a beautiful experience. And I was really deep in my sex magic practice at that time. And I really felt called when my friend reached out to me to lead a group sex magic ritual and teach a little bit about sex magic and guide people in masturbation. And so I did that for the first time on the festival. I loved it. There were so many people in the room there in the Zoom room. And then I did it again for the next one. And it really, at the time, didn't strike me as something that I would do outside of the festival ever. I did try once to organize another one, but I ended up getting kind of stressed and my living situation was weird, so I ended up canceling it. But it was always kind of in the back of my mind as of like something that I may want to revisit if there was ever another virtual intimacy retreat. Unfortunately, they're not doing them anymore. So it was in the back of my mind, but it wasn't something that I was really seeking out. I've really been focusing on creating enough internal safety and learning enough to be safe for other people to learn from. I mean, I'm desiring to be, as trauma informed as I can. I'm really desiring to decolonize my sex magic practice. I'm really desiring to stay as educated and as passionate about things like racial disparity and accessibility. And so I really took time off from facilitating anything because I wanted to get the education and put the work in to be a safe educator. And I think every day, even though I'm imperfect, I get closer to being a person that is safe to learn sex magic from, because sex magic can be very triggering and there are different teachers for different people. And I really feel that the work that I put in, not only with the reading and the watching and the investing in my study, but also the work that I put in spiritually to have like an intuitive connection with the people that I'm working with has really been worth it. I can see the difference. And I really just, one of my biggest fears putting myself out there with this work is causing harm. And I would never want to do that. And so it's important for me to stay educated and to have an accountability process as a facilitator and as an educator. So I developed an accountability process. I created some space in my life for something exciting to come through. And I wasn't planning on doing guided masturbations. I was really planning on actually building a course, but I I don't know if I'll end up following through with that because I had this reading with a friend of mine. I was going to do this tarot workshop, but I didn't promote it because I fell into a depressive episode. And so I just didn't like get around to sending it out to people and inviting people. But one person who follows my work, who's a friend of mine, did register. And so I just gave him a 1-to-1 tarot reading. And he was talking to me like very genuinely saying that he wanted me to host another pleasure circle like I had on the festival. And it really resonated with me. I was like, I didn't know if that was ever something I was going to do again. I told him I would think about it. I prayed about it. I meditated on it. And I'm doing a lot of work around making sure that the projects that I put my energy into are something that I align with. And I'm also really surrendering to whatever the universe has for me because, I did a lot of live shows before the pandemic, Sell Your Body show and other, meetups for polyamorous people. And I was teaching some magic as well in person. And I loved doing things live, but when I started back up recently, I actually realized that it's way too much work for the amount that I get out of it spiritually now. I always feel so psychically drained after being in those spaces, and it requires a lot of executive function to put those kinds of things together. And for me, I just am so focused on my study right now that I don't have the space to be doing live events anymore. And so I was kind of surrendering to the universe because I still desire to contribute to my purpose on earth. And I'm doing this course about the Bhagavad Gita and like really trying to channel some kind of divine guidance around what it is that I'm supposed to do in my life. I'm about to hit my Saturn return. And I'm just kind of having this feeling of like, okay, I've been like fucking around for a while and I've been doing these like really incredible, really fun projects, kind of trying to find out who I am. And I think I have a good idea of who it is that I am. And now, like, what is it that I'm supposed to bring to the world? And so when I had this request from a beloved friend who I love dearly, I really wanted to honor, not only the source of the request, but the fact that I have been praying for an opportunity to better understand what it is that I'm supposed to be doing on this earth. Total, like, existential crises. I've been falling into these depressive episodes pretty frequently. I've been having a lot of medical issues with my body and a lot of anxiety around that. And so I gave it a yes and I put it together, and it was a small group. It was smaller than the ones at the festivals, obviously, because a festival has a built-in audience. But the intimate space made it a lot freer. It was also like mostly people that I knew from the virtual intimacy retreat, and people that have expressed, deep care for me, and people that I feel very safe with. And it was dirty and it was fun, and I did a little sex magic education at the beginning, and then we moved into a guided meditation, and then the guided meditation moved into a guided masturbation. And I was able to experience a lot of pleasure in that space and be witnessed in pleasure, which was awesome. It was really wonderful to be in community with people and hear their intentions that they were putting forth. I had everyone kind of dive into themselves and decide, what intention they want to set for their orgasm that night. And there was a lot about feeling sexually free, actually, and feeling secure in sexuality, which was very tender to witness, to know that the thing that I am passionate about is the thing that they are there to receive. And so my prayer was that my energy around that work could facilitate their growth in that area, because you can come to one masturbation session, but those kinds of things are just starting the snowball, going to these events and stuff. So I hope that their snowball got started. And at the beginning of the workshop, this is what was so interesting, was my internet was kind of weird, and so I had to move. I had made my bedroom all cute, and I had this plan for how my body was going to look in certain positions, and I wasn't really able to do that because I had to move closer to my router so that they could see and hear me, because I was having connectivity issues at the beginning. And that made me so nervous, and it took me a long time to relax. But I think the lesson in that was, because I'm always looking for a lesson, like, even in, because I really thought about, like, when I was like moving my laptop around and it like came unplugged and it died. And then I went to this other chair in my living room and the lighting wasn't right. And I was just like, I don't even want to do this. Like, I put all this effort into putting it together, and like now I'm just embarrassed and I don't want to facilitate anymore. But really, all it took was when I restarted the meeting, I saw that every single person was back and they were smiling, and it just activated this, like, the voice that I was hearing like psychically was saying like, this is a part of your growth as a facilitator, is to kind of lean, because I have this edge around not being perfect, right? I'm a Virgo, so I have to be perfect all the time. And the voice was really like, even in your imperfection, you come to the table with so many strengths. And it invited my attention to move away from my imperfections to my strengths. And so I spent the first few minutes after that, like, kind of feeling sort of shaky, and then my strengths really started to come through, which is so wild because I recently did a spell with my deceased father, who is in my spell work all the time. Shout out to my daddy. And he is a Leo, and there's this beautiful relationship between Virgo and Leo that is exhibited on the strength card. And so I did a spell with him with the strength card towards an intention. And so in that moment, like when I looked back on it afterward, I was like, wow, like that was such a strength moment of me, like kind of floating in my Virgo energy and like not feeling perfect, and then the confidence of Leo coming, like circling around to care for me. And through that experience, I now have a gift of confidence for the next time that or for the many next times that there will be issues that I just feel are, that I feel not in my not in my soul and not in my higher self, but in my ego. My ego looks at mistakes and at like technical difficulties and at issues where I feel incompetent. It sees those things as roadblocks, right? That's what my ego says. And so the invitation is to really listen to my higher self and to my spirit team to realize that they are not roadblocks, that they are moments of humanity, really, at the end of the day. Some of them are lessons, and some of them are just the circumstances of being on this planet as a human in a body. So at the end of the day, I had a really great time. I loved facilitating again. I'm definitely going to do another one. There's going to be another pleasure circle on the eclipse on April 30th. So it's in Taurus. So it's going to be a very luxurious, pleasure centered ritual. And I have one more live show on April 15th, and that's going to be the last Hot Slut Speakeasy, which is the burlesque variety show that I do, the kinky one. And then I'll be done with shows for at least the rest of the year, if not longer, so I can really focus my energy on facilitating, because I do think that my my purpose has been revealed to me, that it's around like sexual healing and sexual liberation. And those shows that I've been doing have done that for so many people. And that was my intention when creating them. That's the whole concept of Sell Your Body Show. But I feel like that the my role in those shows have really run its course, and I can bring that intention into my other projects and serve a greater scope of humanity. Now that I'm not drinking, like, it's just the energy at the bars and at the venues is really not the kind of energy that I can really safely be around, to be honest. And that's not to say that there's anything wrong with that. It's just that I'm being called to create more accessible environments for this kind of work, and that those environments that I do the shows in are not accessible to the people that I need to reach in this next chapter of my life, which is so exciting. There's a lot of grief that comes with that, And I feel like I spent, like some of these depressive episodes that I mentioned before, like those were me being in the process of grief around my identity as a showrunner. It's not who I am anymore. And there's a lot of shame and pain that comes with that because it was such a huge part of my ego. But, I'm going in a different direction. And the city doesn't need the shows. Like I feel like when I started, there wasn't a lot of entertainment like that. And now there is a lot. There are other variety shows, there are other queer shows, there are other spaces where people are doing, you know, they're kind of pushing the boundaries between like kink and mainstream entertainment. And I don't think that my work around that is subversive any longer, which kind of takes some of the fun out of it for me because I have nothing to rebel against anymore in that field. So now I'm just going to take all of that chaos to the internet and see what happens. So I've been playing with kind of like a rating system for my events, doing kind of like more like soft G-rated events that aren't super sexual but are pleasure centered, and then mature events that are sex centered but not like very nudity or genital centered, and then doing like rated X where it like gets very cam girl. So that's kind of something that I'm playing with right now. I'll keep y'all updated on how that ends up manifesting. I took some notes on that today, and I'm kind of journaling it out and seeing what comes forth with that, because one of the things about aiming for accessibility when it comes to working through things like sex magic and pleasure magic, sometimes like genitals can be really triggering, conversations about sex can be really triggering, and being sex focused can actually be alienating to some people. So I want to kind of increase my accessibility, or increase the accessibility of the events by giving people different levels to explore in the space so that they can kind of work their way toward, not everybody's going to be like, oh yeah, let me show my vagina on a webcam and have people compliment it. Not everybody's like there yet. And so I want to help people at every level. So those are all of the things about the new moon ritual. And then I'll talk briefly about the breakup as well, just because it is my diary entry, and you cannot have a diary entry without talking about boys in my lifetime, in this experience at least. So I was in a really beautiful relationship. It went for about 6 months, and he was very supportive and loving. But I think what I kind of realized was that being with someone who did not quite believe in magic, and being with someone who wasn't doing the work emotionally, who wasn't deepening their own connection with themselves, even though, I mean, in my eyes, like this man is perfection. Like he is so wonderful. It just seemed like there was a disconnect between the way that I lived my life and the way that he lived his. And I'm such an emotional being that there was just being with someone who wasn't as emotionally sensitive as I was, and didn't have like the vocabulary around trauma that I needed in a partner. I think that it's really beautiful to be with people and encounter people that don't have a lot of significant trauma like I do. Like it was so great to be in a relationship with someone who treated me really well. And I think this is probably the first relationship I've been in a long time where the relationship didn't center around things like trauma bonding or unpacking trauma together. So that was a breath of fresh air. But I did realize like I actually need someone who's educated enough about CPSD and PTSD, or at least some kind of trauma work or some kind of spiritual work, to be able to support me. And so that relationship ran its course for that reason. There's a part of me that feels kind of flawed, like I'm just too traumatized or too mentally ill to be in a healthy relationship. And then there's just this other part of me that knows that, mental health and trauma recovery is something that I'm not only experiencing, but I'm passionate about. It's not just how I show up as a human being. It's something that I'm constantly studying and trying to have a deeper relationship with. And it doesn't feel fulfilling for me to be in relationship with people who are not receptive to that kind of work and aren't excited about that kind of work, right? So, yeah, he's still great and I still adore him. I think he's wonderful. But I'm single now. I'm polyamorous, but he was my only partner. And I'm now going to be launching into some spiritual celibacy. And I don't really set time limits on how long I stay celibate for. I'm going to definitely do a whole episode on spiritual celibacy soon, but I will say that I do plan on remaining single and celibate for a while because I am doing some deep transformational work right now in my sex magic practice. And this epiphany that I'm about to transition into doing online workshops has put a lot of work in front of me to start building out the back end of that, the technology part and the content part. And it's also really spiritually demanding because it is an invitation to actually step up as a leader, actually step up as a teacher, which is something that I've been really running away from. I mean, and for good reason. I didn't feel ready. And I think that one of the big mistakes that people make when they're moving into things like coaching and teaching is kind of launching things before they're really ready internally. And the kind of teaching that I was doing before was just very surface level, you know. But now that I've learned what I've learned, I'm like ready to go deeper and I'm ready to really liberate people back into their bodies. I'm really ready to start tackling some 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 deeper parts of the things that I feel like I was tackling with the shows, which is just this systematic sexual shame that oppresses us and keeps us small and prevents us from being our authentic selves and eventually manifests into things like interpersonal violence and abuse. It manifests as us enacting harm on one another because we don't know how to be present in our bodies and we don't know how to hold sexual energy safely. So I'm really excited to start working really intimately with that and bring it from the inside of me where I've been doing all of this deep, work and bring it out for other people to witness and experience with me. So in that way, I am grateful for the breakup because I know I was feeling the call. It was right after I launched the first episode of this, of Dear Divine Diary. I was thinking, I really feel like I need to be celibate, and I'm feeling the call to just like, remove the interpersonal part of sexuality so that I can focus on doing some deep work. And then I was like, oh well, I have a boyfriend right now, so I'm not really gonna go through with that, which it's possible to be celibate in partnership, which we'll talk about. But I don't think it was possible for me because I am a sex and love addict, which is something that we'll also talk about in greater depth. But I think I've been vulnerable enough for today. And I feel like my diary entry is complete. So much gratitude to the people that are listening and the people that have been kind of supporting my work for long before it had any structure. When my work just looked like me being myself, I like cannot express gratitude enough for the formative people that have been really supporting me and really cheering me on and yeah, that energy is just so blessed. And yeah, I feel even though I'm laughing because I'm in like one of the hardest moments of my life actually. The breakup is really painful. This new version of myself being birthed is very painful. And I look around at my life right now and I'm not exactly secure and I'm not exactly sure. And I'm having these dips of sadness and these anxious moments and I feel myself leveling up and all of the challenges that come with that are just so heavy. And even in the midst of that, I just am experiencing so much gratitude and love and excitement for this next chapter, because there are a lot of hard things about being a psychic, but one of the perks is that even when you're in a hard time, you can see that there is something on the other side of the mountain, and it is beautiful. So I am grateful to be able to see the golden future that is waiting for me. And I am really excited that there are some people that are a part of that. So I will send you off with a bell. Thank you for listening.